start seeing folks join now. There we go. Welcome, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm seeing the attendee numbers tick up here. We'll give it just a second, Sophia, before we jump in.
So exciting.
So exciting.
I'm so excited. This is like my social outing. Party.
That's sad? Yes.
Well, it's 7 p.m. where I am. I'm in the south of France, so it's literally, you know, evening time.
I hope you have a glass of wine next to you for this career webinar.
Actually, we should do that. We should have like a drinks thing. But not when I'm actually talking about technology. Like I'm
yes, okay. All right, it is 12:01 by my clock here in Chicago. So I think it's time to get started. Welcome everyone to this webinar presented by alumna Sophia Matveeva. Let's talk about getting into technology here. So I'm going to give you a few brief housekeeping items, and then we're just going to dive right in. This is a Zoom webinar, so you are not on camera and you're not able to chat directly with Sophia, but you can contribute questions throughout the session. So at any point when you have any questions, please share them in the Q&A function. We'll have a moderated Q&A at the end. I'm also going to be recording this session, so we can send the recording to everyone via email in case you missed any tidbits that you want to refer back to. And so now I'm going to briefly introduce our presenter and then turn it right over to you. So Sophia Matveeva runs the Tech for Non-Techies education community. Her course on technology for non-technical professionals has been taught at London Business School, featured on Forbes, and in fact, she has a podcast you can listen to, Tech for Non-Techies, on Apple and Spotify. She's contributed to the Financial Times, the Guardian, and Forbes on entrepreneurship and technology. And she's advised Chicago Booth's New Venture Challenge and the Microsoft by London College Fashion Incubator. She also runs, on top of all of this, Enty, a fashion tech company, which won App of the Day by Mashable and was named one of the world's best fashion tech startups by Grazia. She holds her MBA from Chicago Booth and a bachelor's in politics from Bristol. She splits her time between London and the south of France, where she is right now. And I love it. You say that you play tennis and sales with great enthusiasm and very little skill. And I think, Sophia, that you just described my life in a nutshell: great enthusiasm and very little skills. So with that, I will turn it over to you. And I'm so grateful for you sharing your expertise with us today.
Thank you so much, Sam. So actually, one of the things that I want to share is that I think in many things, especially in what you need to know about technology to succeed in tech as a non-techie, enthusiasm, I think, is far more important than a lot of the skills. I mean, obviously, this is not the case if you're a surgeon, but that's not what we're talking about. So I'm going to share some slides with you. Actually, Sam, would you be able to, first, would you be able to just get a poll number 1? Because I'd love to get to know who our lovely people are.
All right, I'm going to share the results here. It looks like 30% of the folks in the line are looking to transition into tech via entrepreneurship, closely followed by another role potentially. We've also got 17% interested in product management, and then 9% in investing, and then 70% don't know yet. So looking for some guidance from you.
Well, we're going to have a whole potpourri, but poll number 2. So what is the biggest obstacle to your career transition? Does it look like a hippopotamus?
We'll give it a few more seconds here. All right. So it's looking like almost half say my professional experience isn't relevant, followed closely by 20% don't have the technical skills, and then 16% don't know what the options are or perhaps have other obstacles in mind.
Okay, well, thank you so much. So I'm going to attempt to try to solve some of that. So I'm going to share quite a lot of information today, but I'm also going to give you all sorts of free resources that if something resonates with you, you can then go and listen to something or listen to an episode of my podcast to essentially learn more. So this is what Sam has already told you about, but I'm actually a repeat offender at the University of Chicago. So I went to UChicago for college for 1 year, for 1 year abroad, because I went to university in the UK, and I loved it so much. And I made some of my best friends, who you will actually see in our session. And I decided I was going to come back to the University of Chicago and do something. I didn't know what. I was like, is it going to be School of Divinity or law school or whatever? And then, turned out that it was business school. Anyway, the point is, I studied political science, not computer science. And I actually think that has worked out quite well for me. So if you're not one of those people who has studied computer science, which I'm assuming a lot of you haven't, then don't despair and don't think that you have to completely transition and completely change everything about yourself. So this is a headline from the Financial Times, which is telling you what I'm assuming you already know, that big tech got even bigger during the crisis that we're in right now. But it's not just big tech. So obviously it's, Amazon and Netflix. I mean, literally means we're just talking about how Netflix has been saving my sanity throughout this time. Amazon has been making sure I have my daily needs. But it's not just big tech, it's also smaller companies. Some of them, some of the startups have done well, but also some companies that weren't huge have really, really grown. But it's not just technology companies, it's also companies that had transitioned to digital. So more traditional companies that transitioned to digital earlier are doing well. So what does this actually mean for you? It means that as we come out of this crisis, hopefully very soon, that the world has accelerated and technological adoption has adapted. And so essentially this, I believe, is where the opportunity is. So yes, the big tech companies are going to be hiring more and more, but not just the big tech companies. So companies that are interested in having a strong digital presence, and now basically most companies are interested in having a strong digital presence. Also, as we'll go through later on in the session, there will be more acquisitions. We already see non-technical companies hiring, buying rather tech companies. And because you're going to have more acquisitions, that's also going to have its own results onto the ecosystem, which basically means more founders with exits, which means that more investing, and all of this basically means more innovation. So there are all sorts of different ways to join this. And I think that this whole emphasis on careers in STEM does actually put off a lot of people who have backgrounds similar to mine. So, I began, I studied political science, began my career working in the media, then I worked in private equity, had a little foray in the art world in India, but then I got my MBA Chicago boot. And then I created a tech startup, and that's how I transitioned into tech. And the journey was really difficult because there wasn't really much material for how a non-technical person can work with developers and work with designers successfully, and how a non-technical person can succeed in tech. Most of the things I saw, most of the learning materials I saw were all about, oh, you need to completely retrain. So I actually did try, I took quite a lot of courses, and I did do quite a lot of stuff that was really expensive and unpleasant and unnecessary. And I want to show you today that that is not necessary. It's possible, but it's not necessary. So in order to benefit from the tech boom, you could retrain as a developer or a data scientist. And actually, my roommate from UChicago did retrain as a data scientist. She began her career on the business side, and literally she completely retrained, and now she works at Facebook. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever taken a coding course, but some people, I just find it really boring. There are other things that I'm good at. And yeah, I mean, I can force myself to do it, but why? Why do something that you're not going to be particularly good at, you're not going to enjoy, and also you have to spend lots of money to learn it? That does not sound like fun. So you could just be a non-techie in tech. So Microsoft, who, they know one or two things about technology, they say that the total number of technology-oriented jobs is predicted to increase by essentially 5 times, so by 41 million in 5 years. And so that is technology-oriented jobs. That's not necessarily just developers. The world does not need 5 million developers. What the world needs are people who understand digital, who understand technology. They don't need people who actually build it. Understanding it and building it are different things. And that's exactly what Microsoft says here. They say that there is a digital skills gap. So basically, yeah, you might be feeling like you've been left behind, because that's certainly what I was feeling. And frankly, I was really, really annoyed, because I was thinking, God damn it, I went to all these good universities. I worked in private equity. I thought good things are going to happen. Come on, I worked really hard. And now I have to take a freaking coding course? Anyway, no, you don't have to. So even if you're feeling like you've been left behind and what you know isn't relevant, if you start doing some things now, we do have time. We do have time, but we do need to get started, and you do need to learn some stuff. So this was me before the pandemic, literally just, I think, a couple of months before the pandemic. So I am a non-technical founder of a tech business that, we've got products that are being used by thousands of people. I've co-created apps, I've co-created algorithms. And so this was me just before a panel at a conference, at a really high profile conference in the UK on technology. And literally it was me, a venture capitalist who invest in, their investments include Peloton and Goop, and basically some of the household names that you probably know. So me, this venture capitalist, and a founder of a deep tech firm. Now, literally, when I was first starting out, just building my company, I had no idea how apps and sites and algorithms get built. And so I didn't think that this was possible, because I thought this is only possible if you are actually a developer yourself, or if you essentially completely retrain. Because I think this is what Silicon Valley would have a say. I think so a lot of the stuff coming out of Silicon Valley, so for example, if you listen to the Andreessen Horowitz podcast, Andreessen Horowitz specifically say that they don't like investing in non-technical founders, but the world is now changing. So I didn't think that this was possible. And well, it was when we could still go to conferences. Okay, so I know that I promised you 3 case studies, but I'm going to give you 5 case studies because I like to over deliver. So basically we're going to go through 5 different examples of people who have made successful transitions in their careers to benefit from the tech boom, because essentially, there's more money, there's innovation, there's all this stuff happening. But what I want you to see is that there are different ways of going about it. And I can see that somebody has written a question. Okay, shall I just ignore that? I can't open it for some reason. Okay, just ignore that until the end, if that's all right. For some reason, I can't open the Q&A box. So let's talk about basic business lesson. So literally, there is the yin and yang of companies. Every company needs people who make the product and who sell the product. That's your MBA in one go. And it doesn't matter if you're making, pens or you're making iPhones. You need people who are making the thing and people who are selling the thing. And usually those are different temperaments, and usually those are really, really different people. And so if you are one and not the other, doesn't mean that you're superfluous. So figure out which one you are, figure out what you like doing and what you're good at, and don't worry about the bits where you're not going to shine. Nobody can be good at everything. And what's interesting is that to succeed in a tech career, what I've noticed is that the emphasis on coding has decreased. So Now, one of the jobs that's really kind of growing in importance is user experience design. And if you actually look at, the founders of TikTok, they have a very strong design and product management background. The founders of Airbnb, also strong design background. So actually, there was a wave of time when it was basically developers turned CEOs. Now I'm seeing more and more designers turned CEOs, and I think that's something interesting to watch. Community management, that's another job. I mean, I didn't know what this was before I came out of college. And product strategy. So what do you think these jobs have in common? Now, I can't take questions I can't take all of your answers, but just let's have a think. So user experience design, the emphasis here is on the user. So here, community management. The emphasis here is on community. There's a community of users. Product strategy. A product is a solution to a problem that somebody's having. So for example, this glass is a product, but I don't particularly care about having a glass. I don't think I want to use a glass. What I'm thinking is that my mouth is a bit dry and I would like to take a sip of water. So I use a product to help me solve my problem. Again, it's all about me. It's not about the product. And so what these jobs have in common, I'm giving you the answer, is literally people. So if you are thinking, oh, I've been in a sales position or a marketing position, and I don't know anything about technology. Actually, the smart technology companies are now really understanding that actually people who understand how to work with people, that's basically where the opportunity is. So you do actually need to know something about technology. You can't just not know anything, but you need to understand the concept of how stuff gets made so you can work with people who make it. You're not going to be a coder yourself. So it's a bit like if you're going to hire a lawyer, you're not going to go to law school to hire a lawyer. I mean, that is why you hire a lawyer. Equally with accountants, you're not going to get an accounting qualification, but you're going to begin understanding like why you're hiring them, because you want to be able to pose the problem. You want to be able to explain why you're hiring them and to understand whether the result you're getting is a good one. So it's actually very, very similar, So let's go through our examples now. Sam, I don't know, I can't open this Q&A box. So if everybody's still all right, I can see you're still here, so let's do this. Our first example is David Segura. David and I were actually together at UChicago College. And David and I, we both studied computer science. Not computer science, we both studied political science. Neither of us has ever studied computer science. So David is now an investor in almost 60 startups. So he's one of the top angel investors in New York. He founded an advertising technology company called Giant Media, which he sold very successfully to a company called Ad Knowledge, which was owned by TPG. And now he advises various accelerators and he invests and is essentially a very successful person in the tech sector. But as I said, political science. He was working at a company called Comedy.com. Comedy.com is literally a production, basically they were producing comedy content. And he saw that there was a need for essentially an advertising solution. So he built a non-technical solution. And once he had understood that there was a market for it, he hired a tech team to actually make the non-technical solution into a technical solution that could scale. And then he sold that for millions. You can listen to the Tech for Non-Techies podcast with David. And the episode with him is what non-technical founders need to know about tech. So this quote from him is something that I really want you all to remember. David says, you should become fluent and knowledgeable of software trends and best practices. Learn how to manage a technical endeavor from both a project and a product standpoint. but you will not get credit or a moral victory for becoming an average coder in a world that only values excellence. Recruit and inspire technical talent or co-founders to work alongside you and get over your insecurities as soon as you possibly can. So you see here, it's all about co-creating rather than creating by yourself. And actually, if this is what you're interested in, because I see that there are quite a few non-technical founders here, on Monday and on Tuesday, I'm hosting a free masterclass, and it's literally called Break into Tech Masterclass for Non-Technical Founders. So come along to that, and we will talk about the basics of how apps and sites get made. If you then want to go further, there is a course which is not free, but even if you just come to that one session, it's literally just going to be an hour on Monday and on Tuesday, you will get quite a lot. So another option to get into the tech sector, another case study that I want to share with you is the product manager. I saw that a few of you want to take that option too. So traditionally, product managers needed to have technical backgrounds, and in some companies they still do. So for example, I think quite a few of the product managers at Google still need to have technical backgrounds, but for example, not at Facebook. So, you know, it is dependent. It is dependent on what you're going to be doing and what products you're going to be managing. So a product manager is essentially kind of like, think of it like a conductor of an orchestra. A product manager works with developers and designers and sometimes data scientists to essentially create a product, and a product could be like an app or they're kind of like the CEO of an app. So they need to make sure that it gets built. They need to make sure that it gets released on time. It needs to be done on budget. And they also then need to make sure that user feedback is collected, and then it's used to improve the product. And we'll be talking more about product management in this session on Monday, so you'll be able to understand what it is. We've got quite a few examples of how non-technical professionals transitioned into product management, but I really want to share this one with you because I think it's a very good example. So Juliet, who actually did take my course, so former student, she began her career working as a journalist at The Telegraph. The Telegraph is one of the leading newspapers in the UK. So she was working as a journalist. And then she started working as a digital editor. So essentially she was the person who was deciding what goes where on the homepage of The Telegraph. And when she was doing that, so when she was the digital editor and also when she was the journalist, she was uploading her stories. So the articles that she would write, she would upload those stories onto the Telegraph website. So basically there was a product where only journalists could put up their stories, obviously. And because she was using this thing as a journalist, she saw some things that she didn't like. She saw some things that could be improved. And so instead of huffing and puffing and thinking, well, this is all rubbish and the world is against me and technology sucks, she got in touch with the people who were responsible for making the journalist-facing side of the Telegraph website. And so she started telling them, like, okay, you know, this will be better. You could make this easier. You could make that easier. And then the Telegraph product management team, who are in charge of this bit of the Telegraph, they started listening to her and they started thinking, well, like, she really is very helpful to us, but also so they were starting to learn about journalism and she was starting to learn about technology. So she then realized that actually she was far more interested in building the product, so building the tech products, building the site, building the apps. She was far more interested in that than actually being a reporter. So when a job in product management at the company came up, the product management team said, look, we're going to be recruiting for this. You know us, you know the product, you kind of know what you would be doing. Would you like to apply? And so she applied, and that's how she transitioned her career. So there are quite a few examples, as I mentioned, of product managers who didn't start their careers like that. And in general, what I see is that there's the non-technical role. So in this case, the journalist. There was also another person that I spoke to who worked in consulting. So basically there's the traditional job. Then in the middle, there's some kind of digital role. So they're working, so the person in consulting went from just plain old Deloitte to Deloitte Digital, and then she transitioned into product management. Here, Juliet went from journalism to the digital newspaper, and then to product management. All of the people who did this, they knew that they wanted to get into product management, so they networked their way to it. There was quite a lot of rejection for quite a few of them, but essentially it is a path that is perfectly possible. There are more and more MBAs, for example, who are becoming product managers. By the way, when I'm talking to you about people who've been on the podcast, if they sound interesting to you, we have essentially a weekly session where people who are doing interesting things in tech, they come, and then you can ask them your questions. So I'll show you who we've got coming up in case you are interested. Okay, so product manager. What else? So this one I think is particularly interesting. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to see what questions. Okay, I see your questions. I've managed to see them. I will try to answer them at the end because I think that you'll be able to understand better. You'll be able to understand the answer better. But please carry on sending me your questions. It's useful. Okay, so Sophie, I think she is an interesting example because she is still working in PR. So she's working in a communications department. She is not, she's not working in a role that makes tech products, because the non-technical founder, I am that person. At the end of the day, you're responsible for getting a product out. The product manager is also responsible for getting a product out. Sophie, benefiting from the tech boom, working in PR. So she's working in PR at LinkedIn. And I spoke to her when I was doing an interview for Forbes, and I needed to speak to some people, to the chief economist at LinkedIn, and I spoke to her, and she was just as interesting. So essentially her career path is as follows. She began her career at a PR agency, and then she moved in-house. Now that's quite a standard move. But when she started working in-house at LinkedIn in San Francisco, she began working with data scientists and economists, mainly with data scientists. The reason is that, think of LinkedIn. LinkedIn has a lot of data. It has a lot of data on us, but also has a lot of data on job search trends. So what are the jobs that have had the highest rise in interest? What are the jobs that are declining? What are jobs that are rising? How does that differ amongst countries? And journalists generally find that quite interesting. I mean, that's the kind of article that I'm interested in reading, and journalists know this. And so she works with journalists, so she knows that this will be interesting. She herself can't figure that answer out because LinkedIn has so much data that you need a specially trained person to find those answers. And so essentially her job is literally working with data scientists to find out what kind of interesting stories LinkedIn's data has. So the data scientists do the research. She tells them kind of what questions might be interesting to answer. They bring her the research, and then she works with them to essentially work out, like, okay, let's pitch the story. This is an interesting angle. Now, most PR people, first of all, don't do this, but secondly, don't know how to work with data scientists because they don't know what data scientists do. So when I asked her, what did you have to, like, how did you learn to do this? She said that she literally took courses on data science, and they were kind of like data science 101 and economics 101, because the point was not for her to become a data scientist. The point for her was to understand what they're talking about. And this is why I think for the people who are thinking, oh, I don't know what to do yet, I'm not sure if my skills are relevant, like, this is a person who is doing a job that people were doing 100 years ago, but she has updated her skills for the modern economy. So I want to share a couple more other examples with you. So investing and acquisition. And speaking of LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman is the co-founder of LinkedIn. And he said this thing called, in his book called The Startup of You. It's a decent book, but you know there are better books, but this quote is a good one. The business strategies employed by highly successful startups and the career strategies employed by highly successful individuals are strikingly similar. And this is why I think the next point is interesting to explore, especially for the people who, maybe booth grads like me and who maybe worked in traditional sectors like consulting and banking. And now you're thinking, okay, I want to come to the cool kids party where all the tech is, but what do I do? So first of all, I'm putting investing acquisition into one aspect. Obviously, there's so much more to cover. But essentially, investing is on your way to acquisition. So if you're an investor, you're buying a bit of a company. If you're acquiring, you're buying the whole company, right? So it's a spectrum. It's just bit, whole. So what, this is the broad general trend. So there are investors, so there are angel investors, and I saw that some of you are interested in tech investing. And actually on the podcast, we've got quite a few interesting people who are talking about what investors need to know about technology or how to transition into a career in venture capital. So there are angel investors, there are venture capital funds, and then there are bigger funds like private equity funds. So that's on the investor side. Acquirers, obviously we can think of big tech companies buying other tech companies. So, that's Facebook buying Instagram. But where I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but especially with big tech, there's a lot of antitrust. But big tech aren't the only game in town. There are other tech companies buying smaller tech companies. So this is still going to be a thing. But I think for a lot of the non-techies, this bit is where we can really see a lot of opportunity and where we can really shine. So what I'm seeing is traditional businesses buying tech companies. Sometimes they're buying those tech companies because there's a product. Sometimes it's literally an acqui-hire. So we want that team, let's hire them. So somebody in that traditional business is making that decision, and then somebody else in that traditional business is making a decision about how to integrate that team and how to work with them. So if you're thinking about career transitions and you're thinking about a career transition into tech, what I want you to know is that this thing of non-tech companies buying tech companies, that's another thing to look out for. Because okay, maybe you don't want to work at Facebook. Maybe you don't want to work at Amazon. Maybe you've had a few attempts at getting a job in a tech company and they didn't work out for whatever reason. Don't think that the journey ends there. So if you're interviewing for companies, if you're thinking of getting another job, then interviewing with companies that are traditional businesses, but that have aspirations to buy technology companies, to somehow integrate them, that's a really interesting opportunity for you to either be on the strategy team that actually does this thing, or to be part of a company that is thinking this way. So one of the guests that came to speak to our members is an investment banker who literally specializes in advising non-tech companies about how to buy tech companies. So we've got an excerpt of his session. It's called Intro to Technology Acquisitions. If this sounds interesting to you, have a listen to that, because I think there's a lot of opportunity here. And I'm going to show you an example. So does this look familiar? This happened last summer. So Lululemon, which is traditionally known for its fantastic yoga leggings, basically it's an athleisure, it's a sportswear company, and it bought this company called Mirror. And the acquisition was for 500 million, so $500 million. Like, this is not small change. And Mirror literally makes this thing. So it's a company called Mirror. They make this thing. So it's an at-home workout device, kind of very much like a Peloton, but instead of a bike, you get this kind of computer image mirror thing. So then you can stream classes. So the mirror costs about $1,000. And then you pay, I think, $39 per month for a subscription to stream classes. So this is very much, this is hardware, this is software, this is community, and this is leggings. So this is literally an example of non-tech buying tech. Now, there are all sorts of interesting, things that you could say about this acquisition. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? That's not something that we have the time for in this podcast. But what I want you to know is that this is happening. So don't just think that it has to be something that's immediately obvious to you. Clearly, the people at Lululemon thought, okay, home workouts are a rising thing. People are shopping more and more on e-commerce. So, this is even pre-pandemic. How can we get into the person's home? How can we sell more? How can we get to know our customer? How can our customer feel like we're part of their world? Well, okay, let's acquire something that they literally have in the home. And the price range is about right as well. So, somebody who's going to spend $1,000 on this thing has the money to buy Lululemon clothes. And that's a interesting diversification of revenues as well. So this is a way to transition career into tech in a way that is maybe you hadn't thought of before. So here's another way of transitioning into tech, via investing. So this lady is called Oksana Stowe. She is a venture capitalist in London. So she began her career working in Goldman Sachs, and she was not working in technology acquisitions, but she was thinking that, okay, technology, that's kind of interesting. That's where I want to be. This VC thing looks interesting, but as just transitioning straight from banking to VC it's not necessarily like the easiest step, but also I don't think it's a good step. So for example, I'm a founder. I wouldn't want to work with somebody who's never had any experience really working with startups in some way. So either working closely as an advisor, working closely as an angel investor, or actually working in a company. So what she does, knowing this, I'm not the only founder who thinks this. So she goes from Goldman Sachs, and no, she stays at Goldman Sachs, where she's, Goldman Sachs investment banker, makes some money, and she uses some of that money to make angel investments. That's how she essentially transitions her career. So that's how she understands about tech. And when you're making angel investments, a lot of people say that actually you can use that money to understand an industry and to transition your career. If some of those investments work out, fantastic, but there's so much more that you can get out of angel investing than money, because a lot of the time, let's face it, that's not going to work out. So then she gets a job as a principal in a VC fund, and now she is a partner at another VC fund. So not bad. So this is another way of doing it. Okay, this is my last case study for you, and I think this is a really interesting one. So Ronan Walsh, he is a marketer. And so what his company does is they do digital marketing. So they do all sorts of different types of marketing, and digital marketing is literally search engine optimization, Facebook ads, that kind of thing, blogs. So it's digital marketing, but his clients are software as a service companies. Software as a service, SaaS, in case you don't know, it's basically anything where you are paying to access a software. So Zoom is SaaS. The University of Chicago is paying a Zoom, so we can all be on it. So he spoke to our members literally a couple of weeks ago, and so you'll be able to hear his session on how to validate your product. And he said that he had to learn how software as a service companies and products get made. So he needed to learn how software products get made, because in order to market it properly, he needed to understand really what the features are. And when you're marketing, one of the things you do is you essentially find out what people like and what people don't like. So then you can emphasize the bits that people really want. And then also, tell your clients in this case that actually the bits that they're emphasizing in their marketing, nobody cares about. So that's kind of marketing as product validation. And so Ronan is not somebody who's a computer scientist by background, and that's not what he wants to do. But he did need to understand how software products get made in order to work with his clients. And he said that actually during the pandemic, his business has done really well, because literally all they do is they only work with SaaS companies. That is the only thing. So that's another way, for the people who are saying, I don't have a technical background, my skills are irrelevant, so that's my obstacle. So how about transitioning into a career in tech via your clients? You will still need to understand what your clients do, but you don't actually need to do it yourself. So for example, one of the people who took my course, she is a lobbyist at Facebook. So, I think that's an interesting example, because, she was working in regulatory, public affairs and lobbying, and then she ended up taking my course. And the whole point was that she needed to get a holistic view of how apps and sites and algorithms get made. Once you do that, then, you can, whether Facebook needs better lobbyists, that's a whole other story. I don't know. But the point is that you can still be doing a traditional job, but as long as you understand how this stuff gets made, then you can still transition your career into tech. So you can transition via your client. Okay, so these are the concepts that basically you really must know. So how these things get made, the tech stack, which is the back end versus the front end, product management basics, user experience design. I saw somebody asked me a question, what cloud computing is, why you have server costs, how you analyze the product, and algorithms and big data. So I know some of you are thinking, oh my God, I must take courses on all of them now. Don't stop yourself. Put down the credit card. No, you don't need to do that. You can literally do PhDs in all of this stuff. If that's what you want to do with your life, go ahead. I don't think that's necessary. So we cover this in the Non-Technical Founders Introduction to Tech course, but also we cover kind of the core concepts of this on Monday and on Tuesday. So you'll at least be able to understand some of it. And then when it feels right, when you want to, get into the rest. But it's all about understanding how people do these things. It's not about doing it yourself. I'm not telling you to go and code an algorithm yourself. You don't have to do that at all. So what do you actually need to do? So you can literally get started now. So don't think that I can only make this transition after I get all of these certifications. Like, don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. So learn some basic tech concepts. So literally, I've given you so many podcast episodes. Come to the sessions on Monday. So literally, there's a session on Monday and a session on Tuesday. It's free. You have nothing to lose. So you'll learn some basic tech concepts. Also, get involved. So remember Juliet at the Telegraph. So she got involved in digital initiatives as a journalist, and that helped her transition into product management. Even if you don't want to transition into product management, but you want to do something else, the more you get involved and the more you actually do stuff, the more you witness people doing stuff, the better off you will be. And also, if you're getting involved, that means you can build your network. And in successful career transitions, that's what I've seen people do. So for example, if you are a lawyer and you want to work with tech companies, kind of like Ronan's digital marketing company is now working with tech clients, you do need to learn some stuff. You probably need to get on to some roundtable discussions. You need to get involved in some digital initiatives. You need to build your network, and that's how you'll get your first client. And getting your first client, that's always the hardest. because that's your case study, and then you can build your network and get more. So how do you do that? It's not that hard. I mean, I think I'm smart, but I'm definitely not a genius. And I have no intention of working all the time. Literally, we're almost done. But so don't stress yourself out by thinking you have to just master everything. You don't. I haven't. There's no point. So listen to the podcast. It's free. It's on Apple. It's on Spotify. Come to the class. And then there's the 5-week course, which starts on the 22nd of March. So as I mentioned, so these are some of the people that we've got coming to our regular sessions. We have a live session either with me or with somebody who's doing something interesting in technology every week. So these are just some of the people we've got coming up. Jenny Griffiths, who has the Order of the British Empire. It's basically something that the Queen gave her for doing amazing things in technology. She's an entrepreneur of a computer vision company. So if you have questions about entrepreneurship or what the hell computer vision is, or how to work with developers, come and to ask Jenny. Justin was at business school with me at Chicago Booth. He is now working in fintech and the company he is at. So he's one of the most senior people at Railsbank, and he's going to be talking to us about how he transitioned into fintech and what fintech actually is and how it works, and how his bank essentially is revolutionizing fintech in Asia. And for the people who are interested in venture capital, I never say her name properly, so I'm going to say Dr. Del Palacio. Dr. Del Palacio is one of the most respected venture capitalists in the UK. She has worked for the Microsoft VC fund. She's not just in the UK, she's one of the most successful, she's I think one of the most successful VCs worldwide. She is a Kaufman Fellow. So if you're interested in understanding how to transition into a career in venture capital, what venture capitalists do, or how to get them to invest in you, then come and ask Dr. Del Palacio how to do that. Okay, so that's it from me. I would love to take your questions now. Okay, Sam, shall I just...
And we have quite a few. Yeah, let's dive right in. Well, first of all, Sophia, thank you so much. That was a great presentation. I really appreciated learning from you. So let's get into questions. And if you haven't gotten a chance to ask your question yet, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box. We've got a good 13 minutes here for them. So here's the first one. I'm interested in roles focused like community engagement and outreach, learning and development specialists, and this is particularly in ed tech. What do you say is the best way to break into these types of roles in ed tech?
So community engagement is something that you can actually start doing right now. So by the way, I don't know if you've had a look at a company called Kajabi. So if you're interested in education technology, look at Kajabi. It's literally spelled Kajabi. It's an education tech company. I'm one of their clients. I love them. So community outreach is literally, it's all about being a human and it's about interacting with humans, right? So there are literally large Facebook groups or large LinkedIn groups that have their own community manager. And what do you do to manage a Facebook group? You open Facebook and you see what people are writing in the group. You make sure that people are interacting, not like unpleasant people. I was thinking, I'm in a University of Chicago show, say clean words. Anyway, so if you want to get into community management, you can literally start doing that as a volunteer now and show that you've got some of that experience. So if you're working in a full-time job right now, then see what community management situations community management positions you can get involved in right now, perhaps as a volunteer. Is there a company or a charity maybe that has its own Facebook group or a LinkedIn group? Literally, can you become the community manager of that? Become the community manager of that, put that on your LinkedIn, you're a community manager. Then apply to Kajabi. Job done. Okay, next question. Shall I read this out?
I agree. I mean, I think like getting into that volunteering space is a really good way to make a career transition, no matter how you're doing it. So get a little side hustle and then it'll grow from there. We have a few questions here about how to get into various roles. You mentioned user experience design at the beginning of your presentation. It's a growing role in tech. How does one learn the skills necessary for an entry-level role in UX or UI? And do you think it's worth going to a boot camp, more school to learn these skills?
So I'm going to recommend the podcast again because there's literally somebody who talks about this, and they know much more about this than I do because they've done it successfully. So there's an episode called Intro to UX for Non-Techies, but anyway, it's one of the earlier ones. Have a listen. It is with a gentleman called Sang Wald. So Sang is on the board, on the design standards board for the General Assembly. So like that's quite a big design position. And he has never formally studied design, and he's very open about that. And actually in the podcast episode, he literally talks about how he did it. He talks about the books that he read and what had an impact on him. So I think it depends on essentially what's available to you and what you like doing. There are some people who like courses and studying, and also who have the time and the money to do it. And then there are people who don't. And what's interesting about UX is that you can go down either route. Like you do have to learn some stuff. Like you will minimum have to get a book. Like that will definitely have to happen. But getting a book, learning from it, then making a first prototype in the software like InVision to say make a prototype of an app, you don't need to do a course for that. And so if you want to do a course on UX design, for example, go to General Assembly. If you don't want to do that, then get some of the books that Sang talks about. So for example, The Design of Everyday Things is a good place to start. The sprint method, that's a good way to go from idea to a tested prototype. So literally get those two books, start making prototypes with people, get those prototypes tested, make something, and then again, you'll have something on your resume, and then you'll be able to show it. Okay, I can see that Craig is talking about swipe to unlock. So Craig, funny you mentioned that, because Swipe to Unlock was written by 3 people. Adi Agashe is one of them, but Parth de Troja was another, and he was actually a guest, and he spoke to Tech for Non-Techies members, and we have an excerpt of his session on the Tech for Non-Techies podcast. It's called Intro to Product Strategy, where he actually talks about what he does and the Swipe to Unlock book. It is one of my favorites, Swipe to Unlock. If you don't know anything about technology, come to my class on Monday and on Tuesday, and also get this book. Okay. So somebody wants my email address. What do you want? What are you going to send me? You will get my email address when you sign up to the thing that Sam sends about, and then you will get you're signed up. So that way, and then we can chat.
Yes, so I'll send a follow-up email after this with, I've been taking some notes from Sophia's presentation. It'll be a quick recap doc. And then we've also got the recording that you'll be able to see, and a good call to action from Sophia. So you'll get plenty of information from us following this presentation. Let's see. It looks like here's a good question. You talked about lobbying, and go ahead.
I just put the masterclass into the chat, so so you guys can just, if this is what you're interested in, it's literally just your name and your email. Hopefully you know both of these things. If you don't, we've got bigger problems. Maybe tech isn't right for you. Okay, sorry, Sam, you were reading a question.
Oh, no, that's okay. We've got a question here from Charles about lobbying. Can you speak to, do most tech firms have in-house lobbying, or do they hire external lobbyists? How does that work?
Oh my God. So if you're a lobbyist, go to tech. Okay, so yeah, the moral value of what I just said, let's just not question it. Because probably, never mind. Okay, so right now there is a big move towards regulation of technology, because of some election manipulation and various other minor points. So there's a lot of kind of antitrust movement, which means that if there's antitrust movement, there's lobbying. And big tech companies have big money. Big money means huge amount of lobbyist side. I heard that, I think the kind of the full number, actually, no, I'm not sure, I can't, the figure I was about to give you, I'm not sure if I can verify, so I'm not going to give it to you, but essentially, big tech is, especially Facebook has a lot of lobbyists. Some of them skillfully trained by me, no, only one. But I do expect that this is going to be a rising trend, and I don't think it's an either or. I don't think it's in-house versus agency, because they need so many lobbyists, because they are in so much trouble that they're literally just throwing everything that they possibly can. So working in communications or lobbying, because basically communications is communicating with the media and lobbying is communicating with politicians. These are, you know, very, very well paid positions. You know, George Osborne, oh no, not George Osborne, what's his name? Leader of the Liberal Democrat Party. Anyway, he was in the coalition government with David Cameron, Brexit, partially their fault. So he is now he's now working in lobbying and communication for Facebook. So there's a lot of money and there's a lot of opportunity there if that is what you want to do, both in-house and in agency. Okay, right. What else?
We've got a few questions here about operations roles, strategy and operations roles. What do you think are some basic tech or strategy and operations skills that you'd need to be successful in those roles?
How do you, sorry, because I can see, how do you decide between those jobs?
Yeah, how do you decide between product manager and strategy and ops is one? We've got, yeah, what are some tech or strategy skills needed to perform a biz ops role? What are your thoughts there?
So the thing is, I think you always have to, I mean, I'm assuming that question comes from an MBA grad, because I know we all love, like, let's all go to work in strategy because that's important. So I totally get you. But I think what you always need to focus on is the person that you're solving the problem for. Because product strategy, it's a strategy of how you're going to build solution, of how you're going to help that person solve the problem. It's the same with operations. How are you going to align a company to make, like, how are you going to make this company able to solve this person's problem? So I think, like, that's what you need to focus on. You need to really understand how to understand the problem. And I don't mean understand a particular problem, because, for example, the problem that Amazon e-commerce is trying to solve is even different to what Amazon Alexa is trying to solve. So it's not about understanding a particular problem. It's about understanding, okay, how do we do user analysis? How do we understand what we're trying to do here? And then that allows you to make product strategy, that allows you to make operational decisions, but it's all about understanding why you are doing this in the first place. And there's a really great saying, which is kind of part of design thinking, is make the right product, don't make the product right. So that means that, you know, this glass, for example, is a bit wonky and weird and actually really hard to clean. But, you know, it solves my thirst problem. So, you know, I'm not going to get another one until I break this one. Like, I'm pretty happy with it. So the product, you know, isn't particularly made right, but it solves my problem, so it is the right product. And so this is really something that I think all of those roles have in common. So I'd say, in terms of kind of what you want to do to prepare, because also I think if you're going for job interviews, it's very likely that you're going to be applying for product strategy, product management, and operations. Like, I think, I can imagine, especially at an earlier entry level, like if you're going for like a really senior product manager, like, you need to have done it before. But if you're coming out of business school, it's very likely that essentially you'll take the same resume, you will just move the bullet points around, you would just kind of change, you would emphasize different things, but essentially it's going to be the same, like the same jobs. So always make sure that you know how to identify what problem you're solving and for whom you're solving it. So those are going to be the key skills. And somebody mentioned that I could write a book with Adi Agashe. Great. Well, I am writing a book with myself. That's it's going to be cool. Well, it is called the Non-Technical Founders Introduction to Tech, but I'm almost done. Okay. Right. Do we have questions? Do we have more time? Because
I think that's probably all we've got time for now. I just want to thank you so much, Sophia, for sharing your insights, your expertise, and your anecdotes with us. It's been a really wonderful way to spend an hour. And I know you mentioned the power of networking, and especially as people on the line are trying to figure out what comes next for them, I think that's a really great tool. So I'm going to shamelessly plug, drop in the chat, a networking event that we have coming up on Friday morning, Central Time, a virtual networking event. This happens every other Friday, and we almost always have a pretty strong contingency of techies and entrepreneurs on the line. So great folks for you all to chat with and network with. But Sophia, thank you so much for everything. It's been really great. And to everyone on the line, thank you for spending a little bit of time with UChicago today.
I have to say one thing. So people who didn't get your questions answered, I will have more time for Q&A on Monday and on Tuesday after the class thing. So just come to that, ask me your questions. We'll have a great time.
And one person did want to know, is Monday and Tuesday the same thing, or it's a dual part?
Yeah, it's there are 3 different time options. Literally, look on the link.
Look on the link. We'll look online. Awesome.
Yeah, class just done at 3 different times.
Awesome. Well, that is all we have for you today. Thanks so much. Goodbye, everyone.